Hey guys, and welcome to video number 2 on this particular subject. For anyone who has not watched the last video I did, I kind of introduced this argument that I'm going to go into more detail now about wrestling promotions being compared in terms of in-ring quality and how some comparisons do not work and why they should not be used, and what comparisons do work and should be used. So I kind of introduced that argument in the last video. It's kind of an important lead into what I'm going to do here. So if you have not watched that video, I would recommend checking it out to fully grasp what I'm trying to put forth in this video. Basically trying to address people who ask the question, which is better in the ring, CHIKARA or Ring of Honor, because in my opinion that is a convoluted question, because the answer to that question cannot be based on factual argument. It is based on personal taste. And obviously when you ask a question of which is better between two choices, it's always going to be based on personal taste to some degree. But in this case, that's true in a much bigger way, because they're two completely different styles. And they cannot be compared directly because they present two completely different styles in the ring. And neither style can be inferior to the other, can be argued as inferior to the other, because they're completely different, and it really depends on personal taste. If you wanted to compare Ring of Honor to PWG, that would be a much different argument, because they're both kind of based on the same in-ring style. So you can kind of base your answer to that question on factual argument and which promotion has put on better shows in the most recent times. But if you wanted to compare CHIKARA to other similar in-ring products, it would be much better to compare it to what goes on in Mexico, CMLL or AAA. So that is why in the last video I reviewed a CMLL show and I reviewed a AAA show for the purposes of comparing them to CHIKARA, which I'm going to do right now. Basically, I think after watching both shows, and both shows were major shows, considered to be major shows, so I think it's kind of fair to put forth the best show CHIKARA has done this year, this season, which in my opinion is a touch of class, either that or one of the King of Trios nights, against what it's supposed to be AAA's biggest show this year, and one of, not the biggest, but one of the biggest shows CMLL does in the year. Basically, after watching both shows, I can safely say that CHIKARA easily beats out AAA based on this one show. And the CMLL CHIKARA comparison is a little bit more tricky, but I will talk about the Triple Mania first. Basically, even though I gave the Triple Mania show a good rating, I really did not leave that show with a good taste in my mouth. Well, actually, technically I did, because I really liked the main event, but on the show as a whole, I really didn't get that good of an impression of AAA based on that show, because it really didn't come off the way I thought a lucha show would come off. In the ring, definitely, and in the ring, because as far as lucha action goes, what you expect lucha action to be, bodies flying about, a lot of crazy crap going on, there was only really one match that really represented that, and that was the foray for the Cruiserweight title. Every other match seemed to be either a gimmick match or, the heavyweight title match on that card, which was the semi-main event. It made a weird transition in my mind from kind of lucha wrestling to mat wrestling, and I didn't think it came off that well. I mean, that could have been a great match if it had not made this strange transition. It was trying to do both styles at once, I think, and it really didn't work. I had to watch the match again to really talk more about it, but that's kind of what I got from it on first watching. It was kind of strange to me. There was a lot of that going on. I mean, even the good matches were either the main event, I thought, wasn't really based on lucha wrestling. It was based on a lot of storylines. The storylines were carrying that match. I mean, you think storylines are expected to carry CHIKARA's matches to being good and dramatic. I think the main event of that Triple Mania depended a lot more on storyline over wrestling than any match I've seen of CHIKARA's this year, any main event I've seen. Yeah, I would say that that's why the Triple Mania show, it really didn't leave a good taste in my mouth for AAA. Like, obviously AAA has a long history, so I'm sure if I looked more into it, I would find something that I like from them. But as of right now, as of the current lucha scene, I would say that the Triple Mania show failed in that kind of sense, because the common criticism hurled at CMLL is that they don't change with the times. But to me, the CMLL show came off a lot more what I would expect a lucha show to be, which is, you know, high flying wrestling, a lot of fun to watch, and just the crowd was into it, and just a lot more what I thought the show would be. I mean, maybe that was because there was only one main storyline in the CMLL show, and every other match was just kind of there. But yeah, the CMLL show came off a lot better to me, in my opinion, and that is why. As far as Triple Mania goes, in the ring, this is supposed to be the biggest show that AAA will put forth this year, and I think it was just about as fun, maybe, as a B-level Chikara show. That is what I would put it on, and as the biggest show that AAA runs this year, I think it should have been a lot better than that. So the best show Chikara has done this year will, I think, easily beats out Triple Mania, and that is all I have to say about that. Very easy decision there. The CMLL show was a little more tricky because if I have to admit it, yes, the wrestling on the CMLL show was better than what I was seeing on Chikara this year, but it kind of occurred to me that that might be somewhat of an unfair comparison to make because you know, Lucha Libre originates in Mexico, and you often hear these stories about these Mexican wrestlers who kind of are born into this these wrestling families and just have to kind of, they're drawn to this kind of style from a very young age. I mean, from what I read, I think I remember reading that Rey Mysterio started wrestling when he was 15, and obviously you're only going to learn one style when you're in Mexico, which is that luchador style. So obviously the best of lucha over there is on a completely different plateau than in the US. Although, you know, when people go to learn under Mike Quackenbush, I'm guessing they learn that style and they stick with it because, you know, Chikara wrestlers don't commute that often to other promotions, to other indie promotions. So the argument isn't entirely valid, but at the same time I think that does come into it a little bit. Still though, I think that even if you can say that CMLL has better wrestling than Chikara, I think Chikara does not embarrass itself when being put against CMLL, and it definitely holds its own. I think the best of Chikara this year has put forth very good to great wrestling, and I would have to watch more CMLL to really determine the definitive answer to that comparison. But you know, I think on the whole, as far as lucha wrestling goes, and I don't think anyone is denying at this point that that's what Chikara is, I would say that Chikara beats out AAA easily, and I'd say holds its own against CMLL. Now, if you want to, as far as comparing Ring of Honor to other promotions to determine its quality, I would say you have to compare it to PWG, Noah, and New Japan. I'm not going to include Dragon Gate in that equation because, to me, Dragon Gate is a whole different style again. It's a completely different style, in a separate style in of itself, because when you think of Dragon Gate, you're inclined to think more of what we saw at Mercury Rising, which is, you know, six-man tag craziness, people flying about, all that kind of crazy crap going on. Whereas in Ring of Honor, you're more likely to think of, you know, Danielson and McGuinness going at it than what they did in their matches. And, you know, I know that, you know, Dragon Gate, six-man tag, you could be reminded of Lucha in a lot of ways, but I would have a hard time saying that Dragon Gate is a Lucha promotion, to be honest. I'd be more inclined to say that Dragon Gate is a mixture between pure wrestling that you might see in Ring of Honor and Lucha as you might see in Chikara. It's a equal balance, it's an equal mix, which makes it completely different in of itself. So if you want to compare Ring of Honor to PWG, Noah, or New Japan, those would be my three. Then I would say that's how you determine Ring of Honor's quality right now as the best promotion for pure wrestling. And I think that argument comes down to whether you think that Davey Richards is having a better year this year than Marufuji. Now, granted, I did not like the Marufuji Kenta match quite as much as everyone else did. I mean, I've seen people put it really high on their top 10 list, and for me, it was only out of stars. I would say it was only 4.25. You know, it was Kenta's return match, but he didn't win. Like, so I don't know. I thought it was a great match. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't like it quite as much as some other people did. And I think now that Davey has had a 5-star match this year in most people's minds, he kind of gets elevated to that spot of having the best year this year. But that is kind of that's a completely different topic. I just kind of wanted to close this argument. Well, I'm not going to close it. You can comment and respond or whatever you want. But that's kind of my final word on this. I don't think that Chikara is inferior to Ring of Honor. I think it's a completely different style. I think that you have to compare Chikara in the ring to other lucha promotions, and you have to compare Ring of Honor in the ring to other pure wrestling promotions, and those are the only comparisons that work, and any other comparison to me is convoluted. That's my final word on that. I'm out. I should be talking. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Money in the Bank pay-per-view in a little bit, just to kind of get some thoughts out on that, because I did defend it back when it was first announced, and I want to go into more detail on that. So I'm out. Later.